commanders on the field. We have continued to roll out the Comprehensive Performance Assessment System, CPAS, in order to aid missions in planning, coordinating, tracking, and showing the impact of mandate implementation. With the outbreak of COVID-19, CPAS has been utilized to help prevent the spread of the virus in mission context, while strengthening the capacity of missions to support host countries' pandemic responses. Despite pandemic lockdowns, we have continued to ensure the operational readiness, including the COVID-19 preparedness of military and police units and individual military and police officers through a hybrid model of in-person and virtual training, assessments, and evaluations. 4 units have been remotely assessed as part of mission-specific fourth generation processes, and 3 units remotely verified for the rapid deployment level. DPO military staff developed a concept for remote pre-deployment visits from April to July 2020 to assess the readiness of units before deployment. 3 remote pre-deployment visits have been conducted for units to be deployed to MINUSCA and MONUSCO. This innovative response enabled DPO to confirm the basic readiness of units and to provide further training recommendations in order to improve PDVs, while necessary under current travel restrictions, inevitably have limitations as compared to the insights and exchange possible through in-person engagement. Likewise, our training personnel are finding that despite its cost efficiency and facilitation of knowledge acquisition, virtual learning needs to be complemented by in-person training. It is for this reason that, following the resumption of rotations in July, DPO police staff visited Djibouti, Ethiopia, Jordan, and Senegal to pilot support efforts aimed at improving the operational readiness of police contributors. Having the right equipment in the right place at the right time with the right know-how remains a critical aspect of performance. Contingent oil equipment is of course key in this effort, and the number of units with critical COE gaps or performance lower than 70% have reduced from 23 units in the fourth quarter of 2018 to 18 units in the first quarter of 2020. Over the past year, exchange platforms have been developed and key peacekeeping manuals and standards updated to enhance the access and awareness of troop and police contributing countries. For the first time, 2 units from the PCRS Rapid Deployment Level, RDL, were successfully made available to be deployed to a mission within the required 60 days timeline. I thank the member states that made specialized capability pledges for MINUSMA and encourage others to do the same. We are also pursuing the implementation of the force adaptation plans in MINUSMA and MONUSCO. They are indispensable to our operational effectiveness, and they are an integral part of A4P. We count on continued support from member states for their implementation. Expanding the role of women is another key dimension to improve the overall performance and effectiveness of peacekeeping operations. More women in peacekeeping simply means a more effective peacekeeping. Resolution 2538, which this Council recently adopted, stresses anew this important goal and the need for continued efforts to achieve it. In this regard, we continue to make significant headway on ensuring gender parity amongst peacekeeping personnel. At headquarters, parity has been of peace operation and in the shared regional structure, with some exceptions. In the field, as of July, women made up 22% of civilian staff and 35% of heads and deputy heads of DPO and DOS-led mission. Targeted efforts to increase the representation of women in the field remain underway. As far as uniformed personnel are concerned, with the support of troop and police contributors, .6% of military professional posts at HQ against a target of 17%. And in the field, 18.3% of staff observers and military observers against a target of 17%. For police, women accounted for 28.2% of individual police officers in the field against a target of 22%, and 10.9% of formed police units against a target of 10%. Women also represented 29.6% of deployed justice and corrections personnel against a target of 27%. However, we are yet to achieve our targets for the percentage of women in formed contingents, and we collectively need to redouble our efforts in this area. While much has been achieved, the support of member states remain critical to maintaining hard-won gains and reach the targets. Turning to another area equally critical, that of safety and security of UN peacekeepers. I want to stress that the safety and security of our peacekeepers continue to be of paramount importance. Allow me to pay tribute to our fallen peacekeepers and commend troop and police contributing countries for their steadfast commitment to international peace despite the very real risk and price to pay. As we have continued our efforts to enhance safety and security, we have seen the continued decrease in fatalities in peacekeeping's operation from acts of violence, from 59 in 2017 to 27 in 2018, 25 in 2019 to 8 so far in 2020. The measures taken through the action plan for improving the security of United Nations peacekeepers have no doubt contributed to this. And I should highlight that the number of incidents and attacks against our peacekeeper, far from decreasing, has actually increased over the same period of time. We will make every effort to continue reducing the number of fatalities, as one peacekeeper fatality is one too many. We are invested in the implementation of Resolution 2518, a testament to this Council's commitment to the safety and security of peacekeepers. Over the past year, we have worked on developing clear policy and practices to ensure that we safeguard our personnel. We have also promulgated policies on casualty evacuation, CASEVAC, authority command and control, and the first combined guidelines on military and police cooperation mechanism. The new CASEVAC policy was preceded by rigorous stress testing, and missions have begun updating their CASEVAC procedures in line with the policy. And here I would like to pay special tribute to our cooperation with the Department of Operations Support and my brother and colleague, USV Atul Kare. This is a great cooperation that results on many advances, including the one that I just mentioned on protecting our peacekeepers. Meanwhile, MINUSCA, MINUSMA, and MONUSCO's support to host countries for the investigation and prosecution of serious crimes against peacekeepers resulted in an over 100% increase in the number of investigated cases. In a landmark development, 6 individuals were convicted in January and February 2020 in the Central African Republic for the killing of 11 MINUSCA peacekeepers in 2016 and 2017. In the area of conduct, we continue to conduct and discipline. We continue to strengthen our approach to preventing and addressing violations of our standards of conduct, including in the area of sexual exploitation and abuse. While the general trend in the number of allegations has been downward, we have continued to see intermittent spikes that indicate that we cannot let up. We have put in place analysis, risk management, investigation, and victim assistance measures. We must continue to strengthen our partnerships with member states and regional organizations to reflect the holistic and collective nature of this work. We need timely action to address pending allegations and expanded efforts to pursue criminal accountability and solutions for victims of sexual exploitation and abuse who raise paternity and child support claims. Member state engagement is imperative. We urge member states to continue to work with us, whether by making a voluntary contribution to the Trust Fund in support of victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, or through a high-level meeting on conduct and discipline early next year. For those who have not done so, we encourage you to become a signatory to the Secretary General's voluntary compact on the commitment to eliminate sexual exploitation and abuse, and to those who have signed, we ensure its full implementation. Turning to partnerships, we have continued to deepen our collaboration with regional organizations. Our political partnership with the African Union remains a critical part of our engagement, for instance in Darfur and in the Central African Republic. Strategic level consultations on specific country situations have also deepened, with an increased frequency of regular virtual horizon scanning meetings, for example, between the AU and the UN. On the ground, peacekeeping missions operate on a daily basis in partnership with regional organizations such as the AU, but also the European Union, as well as with agency funds and programs, in order to maximize the collective impact of our action, be it for capacity building or peace building. Our engagement on this area also extends to enabling and supporting peacekeeping partnerships, notably through the Triangular Partnership Project. We have continued to build TCC capacities in engineering, medical, and signals in Africa, and have now extended engineering training to ASEAN and the surrounding regions. The light coordination mechanism has already successfully matched a number of member states on training needs. Last but not least, peace building and sustaining peace. Our missions contribute, of course, to sustaining peace, whether by supporting inclusive peace settlements or through capacity building work. We do this with others in the UN system, as well as international financial institutions. For example, our partnership with the World Bank has contributed to improve joint delivery of security sector reform in Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, and South Sudan. A strong focus on our work in this area is to ensure successful transition that strengthen the UN system's engagement on sustaining peace. Mr. President, more than 2 years after the launch of A4P, we have made tangible progress in strengthening peacekeeping operations. This progress has been accomplished with your support as council members, as troop and police contributors, as host countries, and as financial contributors. The support of partner organizations has also been essential. As we look to the future, we must build on the progress made and shift into a second phase of A4P implementation. The Secretariat has begun crafting overarching priorities for the next phase in 2021 and beyond in the continued framework of the A4P Declaration of Shared Commitments. For the next chapter, we are drawing upon analysis of continued challenges and need facing our operations, together with a push to complete pending tasks from the first phase. We are defining a limited number of global priorities for each A4P thematic areas. These priorities both of the UN system as well as of member states and other partners to advance on our shared commitments. Broadly speaking, our assessment is that priorities for the next phase should address at least 8 critical systemic cross-cutting issues that are relevant across A4P themes. First, we must redouble our efforts to ensure that all our actions are coherent with and contribute to overarching political strategies that further a positive peace. Aiming for short-term stability is not enough. Our missions should be vectors for inclusive, responsive, and transformative futures for the people we serve. This means linking particular mandate areas, whether protection of civilians or institution building, back to politics. Second, the pandemic has taught us painfully how widespread inequality is and how social justice, development, and peace go hand in hand. We need more substantive strategic integration with development and peace-building actors on an ongoing basis, not only during drawdown and transitions. Third, in today's challenging landscape, we need to work on deepening our integration within our operations among civilian and uniform components, as well as with the UN counter team. We also need to do so critically with regional organizations and actors that have a tangible influence in conflict-affected countries. Fourth, we will further our work on performance. We will continue to enhance mission and HQ performance and accountability, including through regular evaluations, policy frameworks, and systematization of integrated structures in peacekeeping missions. Within the integrated performance and accountability framework, we will also continue our efforts to better recognize good performance and identify and respond to cases of underperformance through appropriate remedial measures. Fifth, and very much related to performance, as they are by essence linked, we will continue our efforts to improve the safety and security of our peacekeepers. We will do this through ongoing implementation of the action plan on improving security for peacekeepers in areas such as on force protection, camp defense, and reinforced medical standards, training, and care. We will also continue the shift towards more agile operations with improved situational awareness. Sixth, we must continue to strengthen our strategic guidance and planning capacities, including by developing clear objectives that are known to all and are reflected in directives that provide strategic direction. We must also implement critical new policies on command and control and CASEVAC and further improve medical and welfare support for all UN personnel. Seventh, we need to deepen our efforts to achieve a more robust and agile posture, including by drawing upon new technologies and effective strategic communications. This means not only generating the right capabilities from troop and police contributors, but also shifting our traditional approaches for example, outreach, countering mis- and disinformation, camp management, engineering, and logistics. Finally, we must apply a gender perspective across all our areas of work. Gender is not only about numbers, it's also about the meaningful consideration of the gender differentiated impacts of our work and what we hope to achieve. These areas will draw upon and contribute to progress in the 8 A4P teams, from mission-wide performance, safety and security, to sustaining peace and women, peace and security. Looking forward, we would like UN peacekeeping to continue to be an indispensable multilateral tool in the peace and security toolbox in the years to come. We will need to continue to respond to the immediate challenges, including fragmented armed groups, weak commitments to peace by conflict actors, and the regionalization of conflict. Over the next 5 to 10 years, these challenges will be compounded by other ones. We are likely to see a world transformed by potentially lethal and disruptive technologies, climate-related disruptions, or more urbanized populations. To have missions fit for purpose for the coming decades, we are examining responses to systemic issues and have begun an internal reflection on the types of adaptations that will be required for UN peace operations to continue to make a difference in the future. As we continue our work to enhance UN peace operations, I want to pay tribute to the women and men in peacekeeping who are working every day in the field and in headquarters to deliver on the mandates that this Council has entrusted us and to continuously improve our operations. We count on your support as Council members, as well as that of other peacekeeping partners, to strengthen our operations through Action for Peacekeeping and beyond. Our shared commitment for peacekeeping, as embodied in the Declaration, remain the cornerstone to ensure that peacekeeping is fit for purpose and able to tackle the challenges it faces. Our continued engagement for the implementation of these commitments remain indispensable. The upcoming 2021 Peacekeeping Ministerial in Seoul will be another opportunity to make tangible contribution. As we mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, we need to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The need to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war remains imperative as ever. It is only through strengthened joint and collective international action and solidarity that we can ensure that progress continues to be made in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie M. Lacroix de son exposé. Je voudrais à présent donner la parole aux membres du Conseil. Je donne la parole au représentant de l'Afrique du Sud.
Mr. President, we thank you for scheduling this annual meeting on progress to reform peacekeeping and thereby addressing existing gaps and respond to peace and security challenges. The statement is delivered on behalf of Niger, Tunisia, St. Vincent and Grenadines, and South Africa, the A3+1. We thank the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Mr. Lacroix, for his usual insightful and expansive briefing. Since the formation of United Nations Truth Supervision Organization, UNTSO, in May 1948, the first UN peacekeeping missions to monitor the armistice agreement between Israel and its Arab neighbors, more than 1 million men and women have served under the UN flag in more than 70 UN peacekeeping operations. More than 100,000 military, police, and civilian personnel from 125 countries are in 14 peacekeeping operations. Mr. President, Niger, Tunisia, St. Vincent and Grenadines, and South Africa paid tribute to 3,932 men and women who have lost their lives since 1948 in pursuit of global peace and security. We therefore extend our gratitude to those brave men and women whose commitment and dedication have saved scores of lives and continue to do so during the most unprecedented times. We owe them the great deal of gratitude for their effort. Mr. President, as speaking event, there is a need to identify critical capabilities that are in short supply so as to address some of the challenges in the UN peacekeeping missions. As such, welcome the continuing discussion on improving UN peacekeeping to be more effective and adaptable to the changing nature in line with Resolution 2378. To commend the UN for the measures taken to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on peacekeepers and peacekeeping operations. The pandemic have underscored the importance of the safety and security of peacekeepers who work in challenging environments, in addition to dealing with asymmetric threats. In this regard, we call for stronger support to peacekeepers in order to mitigate attacks through appropriate training and capability building, as well as through the use of modern and smart technologies. It is also imperative that the UN form part of pre-deployment training in order to improve the level of training of peacekeepers, as Mr. Lacroix said. Mr. President, in the last 2 decades, there has been a surge of peacekeeping missions across Africa, with a trend in multidimensional integrated stabilization missions. In April 2017, Secretary General and Chairperson of the AU Commission signed a joint UN-AU framework for enhanced partnership in peace and security. It was the first agreement of its kind signed at the level of Secretary General. This built on the increasing close cooperation since the two organizations signed a 10-year capacity building program for the African Union in 2006. UN support is organized around a number of thematic areas with the Department of Peace Building and Political Affairs, DPA, leading to a cooperation in the area of peace and security. DPPA, in collaboration with the AU, also continues to work in areas of conflict prevention, mediation, electoral assistance to the AU policy organs. Through hybrid missions such as UNIMIT in Darfur, an AU mission in AMISOM in Somalia, the AU troops play a significant role in maintaining peace and security on the continent. The AU has also deployed a significant role in peacemaking in volatile situations in the continent, and they frequently paid ultimate price for their effort. This speaks to a high level of complementarity where AU troops do the heavy lifting and make the ultimate sacrifice in situations where UN peacekeeping operations lack the necessary mandates. However, and unfortunately, we tend to see instances where there is a push by a partner to scale down or amend the role of AU peacekeepers and efforts to phase out its involvement. Mr. President, the A3+1 would like to reiterate the key role played by the AU peacekeepers and note that without their involvement, some conflicts on the African continent will become inextricably more difficult to resolve and potentially more lives could be lost. Gains painstakingly made over a number of years, in some cases at great sacrifice, could be lost by not being guided by situation on the ground and responding proportionally to development that point to the need to maintain the involvement of African peacekeepers. Mr. President, in 2019 and 2020 have certainly been years for amplifying peacekeeping issues, as evidenced by the adoption of resolutions on safety and security of peacekeepers 2518 and women and peacekeeping 2538, and key linkages with the women, peace and security agenda, as reflected in the resolution 2493 that was adopted in October last year. It is important and paramount so that the resolution 2538 contributing to increasing the participation and inclusion of women at all levels in peacekeeping operations. We, A3+1, therefore urge member states to implement the resolution 2538, which builds on the aspirations of resolution 2242, calling for the doubling of the number of women in military and police contingents in the peacekeeping by 2020. We declare our unwavering support for the effective implementation of mandates by peacekeepers and peacekeeping operations. In the same vein, A3+1 acknowledge that the effective implementation of peacekeeping mandates depends largely on well-defined, realistic, and achievable mandates, political will, leadership, adequate resources, policy, planning, and operational guidelines, as well as training and equipment. Mr. President, the A3+1 commend the initiative taken to improve performance in peacekeeping operations, including the rollout of the Comprehensive Performance Assessment System, CPAS, as USG Lacroix said, and the further development of integrated performance policy framework. However, the A3+1 reiterate the view that one-size-fits-all approach should be avoided implementing performance assessment, framework, and mechanisms, including CPAS. It is therefore essential to ensure that each part of the peacekeeping mission has a unique set of indicators for performance. In the context of improving mission performance, it is important to recall the need to generate and strengthen community engagement, which can only be achieved through effective and ongoing communication with the local populations, whose cause peacekeeping serves. Mr. President, the A3+1 welcomed the mobilization of all peacekeeping partners, including troop and police contributing countries, host countries, secretariat, and members of the Security Council, as well as regional organizations around the Action for Peace A4P initiative. The A4P initiative, November 6 January 2018, brings collective action and responsibility to the forefront of our efforts to maintain international peace and security, as well as strengthening multilateralism, which is of paramount importance in promotion, resolution, and management of crises and the protection of people in vulnerable regions. It is our view that all procedures related to caveats must be clearly defined to avoid a situation whereby caveats are perceived as negatively impacting peacekeeping performance. Mr. President, as already mentioned, the A3+1 wish to emphasize the importance of partnership between the UN and regional organizations, sub-regional organizations, and other relevant international organizations. There is an important need for the UN to finalize and finance UN-led peace support operations authorized by the Security Council, consistent with Chapter 8 of the Charter of the United Nations, as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, as recognized in many resolutions of the Security Council, particularly Resolution 2378. Last but certainly not least, the A3+1 condemn sexual exploitation and abuse by all UN personnel. We remain committed to eradicating this scourge and reaffirm our support to the zero tolerance policy on sexual exploitation and abuse. It is vital that TCC/PCC be consulted immediately when allegations of misconduct are reported to ensure that proper measures are taken without delay. Mr. President, in conclusion, the A3+1 urge all member states to work in unison to ensure that the Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations, C34, the primary entity in the UN for making peace policy, continues to discharge its mandate and provide support to the Council's work, and underscore the need to harmonize the decisions that are taken in C34 and the Council in peacekeeping policy issues. We thank you, Mr. President.
I would like to thank the representative. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, says the President? I would like to thank the representative of South Africa for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Dominican Republic. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Agradecemos al señor Jean-Pierre Lacroix por su ponencia el día de hoy. Señor presidente, las operaciones de mantenimiento de la paz son una herramienta vital e indispensable para el mantenimiento de la paz y la seguridad internacionales. Quisiéramos expresar nuestro apoyo y compromiso con la Iniciativa de Acción para la Paz y la Declaración de Compromisos Compartidos, y alentamos a aquellos miembros que aún no han endosado que así lo hagan. Asimismo, la República Dominicana reafirma su compromiso con la implementación de la Resolución 2378. Es por ello que valoramos las consultas cuatrimestrales sobre el desempeño social.
Is why we pay particular attention to consultations.
We need better informed decisions. The interpreter points out that the speaker's sound is cutting in and out, as have my own microphone and others. The sound has stopped and the video has also stopped, reports the English interpreter. Please continue speaking, says the English interpreter. Let's see if it will resume. The interpreter would request that the delegate please start from the beginning of the paragraph again. If you would be so kind, we apologize.
This is why we value the quarterly reports on performance, making it possible for us to take decisions which are properly informed, as well as dealing with the pressing needs before us. We consider the availability of duly trained and equipped personnel as part of the elements which lead to better performance. It is vital to have collective action for mission support, especially when they face major challenges in the midst of a pandemic, in addition to the extremely demanding context in which they find themselves. These challenges are all the more acute if mandates are not consistent with due financing for their operation. As the Secretary General stated, we need a budget which fits mandates, not mandates which fit the budgets. It is clearly important to strengthen cooperation between the United Nations and regional and sub-regional organizations to consolidate the work of peacekeeping missions at a strategic and operational level, contributing to the efforts of member states, both of the host country and troop contributing countries. We also recognize the number of tools and systems. The interpreter is sorry, the sound is inadequate for interpretation purposes.
Lo que se traduce en mayor seguridad y rendimiento del personal.
Jose,
Yes.
Jose, we do not have the interpretation.
Well, I just don't have it in English. I just don't have the speech in English.
We can send it later.
We can send it later, okay? I'll just keep on and we'll send the speech in English later.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador.
I mean, that's the only way.
Thank you.
En ese sentido, extendemos...
You
Yes.
can continue.
Thank you. You hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. En ese sentido, extendemos nuestro más sentido pésame a las familias de las fuerzas de paz que han perdido la vida debido a la pandemia del COVID-19. Esta triste realidad destaca la importancia de monitorear y evaluar estrechamente el impacto de la pandemia en las operaciones de mantenimiento de la paz, particularmente.
This is particularly true for protection of civilians, which means we need to prioritize and tailor to the situation on the ground. Design, planning, and review of peacekeeping operations need to include a gender perspective. And we trust that the resolution of the Security Council 2538 will reinforce this perspective. The interpreter notes that this is very difficult and is mostly reading the speech, checking in occasionally where he is. Likewise, it's necessary to strengthen tolerance policies, zero tolerance policies, with regard to acts of sexual violence and for gender reasons, which are committed by peacekeeping personnel, and deploy gender advisors for protection of women, as well as advisors for children's protection, all of which need to be financed with the appropriate seniority. The interpreter notes that the interpreter has been ordered to suspend interpretation.
Este consejo celebró la reunión formularia sobre la implementación de las resoluciones de juventud, paz y seguridad por las misiones de paz de la ONU. USG Lacroix, USG de Carlo y los demás ponentes fueron enfáticos en dar cumplimiento a estas resoluciones. Esperemos que las misiones elaboren e implementen estrategias adoptadas a cada contexto y que designen puntos focales sobre YPS en línea con la resolución 2535. Para concluir, la República Dominicana reitera el papel fundamental que desempeñan las misiones de mantenimiento de paz. Estas misiones son el mejor ejemplo del multilateralismo y cooperación. Solo a través de la voluntad y los esfuerzos conjuntos algún día lograremos un éxito de paz duradero y sostenible. This speech was sent to all the missions in English, so you can listen to it. And this is one more reason why we have to go back into chambers. I thank you.
Merci. Je remercie le représentant de la République dominicaine pour sa déclaration ainsi que pour son conseil que je prends à mon compte. Je voudrais à présent donner la parole au représentant du Vietnam. Qui, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to
Puis, on ne vous entend pas. We can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes. Now we can.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank Mr. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, Under Secretary General, for his briefing today and for his tireless contribution to the work of the UN peacekeeping operation. I also would like to take this opportunity to commend all women and men in uniform and UN personnel for their hard work on the ground at these very challenging times. Mr. President, over the years, UN peacekeeping operation have no doubt gained prominence as an essential instrument in maintaining international peace and security. But we have also seen relentless endeavor to reform the work of peacekeeping operation, including through, among others, the Brahimi Report, the Capstone Doctrine, the New Horizons Initiative, and today's A4P to overcome past missteps and emerging challenges today. Listening to USG Lacroix, we encouragingly know the progress made across all the 8 pillars of the A4P. We also commend the resilience of UN peace operation in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it is the fact that our peace operations are facing more and more challenges that require further reforms. In this regard, I would like to highlight the following point. First, about the hindrance and attacks against peacekeeping operation. Report of the Secretary Generals have reportedly warned about the hindrance of peacekeeping operation in which MINUSMA, MONUSCO, UNIFIL, UNIDOP, INSOM, and UMBIS, for example, took the greatest challenges. They might not receive support from the host government to approach certain area or face strains by non-governmental forces and armed terrorist groups. More than 8 members of UN peacekeeping operation lost their life, and many more other injuries in 2020 is a clear example. Every day, our people on the ground are still under security threat. So we strongly condemn all types of attacks against peacekeepers and urge concerned parties to respect mandate of peace mission, as defined in the Council resolution as well as Resolution 2518. At the same time, we are of the view that the key to the success of the peacekeeping operation is to ensure first and foremost the national ownership. We believe that every effort of peacekeeping mission is assisting the national government in sustaining peace must be made with the consent of state and party involved. Importantly, sustainable political solution should continue to be at the heart of UN peacekeeping operation and conflict resolution. Second, about long-standing mission operation. Among 13 active missions, more than half have been active for more than 20 years. In more extreme cases, some missions have even been in operation for 70 years. Although many missions have been operated for decades, the peace process remains at a standstill. In this connection, we welcome the finalization of the paper on the sequencing and prioritization of the mandate. Furthermore, we see the necessity to have a well-rounded assessment on the mission mandate. In light of this, an evaluation to ensure efficiencies with emphasis on building peacekeeping capacity and autonomous transition for host country is strongly required. Third, about gender responsiveness. Recognizing the critical role of women in peacekeeping activity, we know the progress in the implementation of the Uniform Gender Parity strategy and the recent adoption of Resolution 2538. However, women on the ground are still facing many difficulties. We call for continued supportive and priority for women peacekeepers, including safety, security, necessary facility, and an enabling working environment. Fourth, about budgetary restriction. For the 2019-2020 fiscal year, the total budget for peacekeeping operation is $6.6 billion. This number is lower than 0.5% of the world military expenditures. Compared to that of 2018 and 2019 fiscal year, it's also decreased by 1.9%. While such reduction was made with the budget, the overall workload has not been eased, but it increased, added only by direct effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, there is a dire need to fulfill the budgetary needs for the peacekeeping operation. We call on the international community to ensure their sufficient contribution for this important duty. Mr. President, before I conclude, I would like to highlight the tangible contribution of ASEAN through its member state to the work of the UN peacekeeping. Taking this opportunity, I would like to also pay tribute to more than 5,000 peacekeepers from ASEAN member states in various UN peacekeeping missions for their dedication and sacrifice. We support every effort to strengthen ASEAN UN cooperation in this matter. And we reaffirm our support for and stand ready to contribute to further strengthen peace operation, putting the people on the ground first. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Vietnam for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Germany.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to start with remarks on peacekeeping in times of COVID. These are extraordinarily challenging times, especially in those places in which people live under the most fragile and dangerous conditions. This is precisely the case where peacekeeping operations are deployed and where Blue Berets serve communities already under stress. Let me express Germany's gratitude to all those men and women serving in peace operations, uniformed and civilian, for staying the course under particularly difficult conditions. I would also like to commend the UN here in headquarters, who under Jean-Pierre's leadership are carefully navigating uncharted waters. Our full support also goes to the SRSGs in the field for their leadership. And Germany stands ready to continue to support the United Nations in adapting to the COVID-19 crisis. While all of us should be focusing on fighting the virus, political conflicts fester on. Violence continues in spite of the Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire, a call that was supported in the beginning of July by this Council. And this is why work on human rights, on stabilization, on security sector reform needs to continue despite the manifold virus-related challenges and obstacles. Against this backdrop, we welcome the integrated approach in peacekeeping missions, addressing the host states' respective needs through military, police, and civil capacities. Let me make some remarks on performance of peacekeeping operations. Jean-Pierre's presentation has shown tangible progress is possible. We encourage the Secretary General to share positive examples, to demonstrate the concrete impact of measures taken, and we also encourage you, in all openness, to report on obstacles and challenges. This is equally important. We support efforts to make peacekeeping reform more data-driven. We need this as a basis for sound decisions on the future of peacekeeping. We therefore call on all host countries and UN bodies, as well as TCC, PCC, to support these efforts and to fully share relevant data. One important parameter for success is giving peace operations the budgets they actually need to properly implement their mandates. This has two very concrete pillars. Firstly, matching mandates of the Security Council with resources in the negotiations in the General Assembly. But this is not enough. Secondly, we all need to make sure that we are actually paying the contributions due to the United Nations peacekeeping budget. Germany, as many other member states, fulfills its commitments. Some others don't. The deployment of adequately resourced, equipped, and skilled military, police, and civilian personnel by member states is another important parameter. More efforts on pre-deployment training and capacity building remain vital. We acknowledge the good work done by UNPOL's training architecture. This must now swiftly be implemented. Let me also make some remarks on Germany's specific contributions. We are staunch supporter of the Action for Peacekeeping agenda. Germany actively supports the improvement of peace operations. 3 examples. First example, training and capacity building. We recognize the efforts of the United Nations and troop contributing countries to improve performance, safety, and security through pre-deployment training for police, civilian, and military personnel, mobile training teams, and deployment of German experts. We can support these efforts. Secondly, strengthening the women peace and security agenda. We launched an initiative to fulfill our shared goal to have more female peacekeepers in UN peacekeeping missions during the German presidency of the Council last year. We are working with partners on concrete follow-up measures, for instance, the inception of a Women Peacekeepers Network. We will also continue promoting the protection of women and girls from sexual and gender-based violence. We are continuously working on integrating this topic in the mandates of peacekeeping missions. On the practical end, the Training Institute of the German State Police of Baden-Württemberg has developed a training course in order to provide skills and expertise to fight SGBV-related crimes. And a third way in which Germany contributes, supporting UN entities in improving performance of PCCs and TCCs. Germany supports UN bodies such as the Strategic Force Generation and Capability Planning Cell, or the Office of Peacekeeping Strategic Partnerships to aid PCCs and TCCs directly, but also to bolster UN capabilities in effectively monitoring and improving peacekeeping capabilities. We continue to support the efforts underway, Jean-Pierre, and we will continue to be a committed partner on making peacekeeping even stronger as part of United Nations operations. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant de l'Allemagne pour sa déclaration.
Representative of Germany for his statement. I thank the representative of Germany for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Mr. President, I wish to thank Deputy Secretary General Lacroix for his briefing. I wish to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the more than 80,000 UN peacekeepers deployed in 13 mission areas and commend them for their courage, sacrifice, and contribution. UN peacekeeping operations are an important creation for the maintenance of international peace and security. It has been 2 years since the Secretary General Guterres first proposed the Action for Peacekeeping initiative, and it is now in the critical stage of full implementation. The unexpected COVID-19, however, has brought about huge uncertainty to conflict-affected countries and caused a serious impact on the UN peacekeeping operations. Right at this moment, UN peacekeepers are working alongside the people in the mission areas to fight the pandemic. Many peacekeepers have extended their mission period and suspended their rotation. In mission areas such as Mali and South Sudan, some peacekeeping soldiers have been affected with COVID-19 and some have even lost life. Whose family we wish to express our deepest condolences. This is a very difficult time for every peacekeeper. UN member states stand in solidarity and support the Secretary in its efforts to organize proper responses to the negative impact of COVID-19 on peacekeeping operations, so that the implementation of will continue. The briefing by DSG Lacroix is extremely important. In this connection, I wish to make 4 observations on how to maintain a positive momentum for peacekeeping operations reforms and facilitate further implementation of A4P initiative. First, we must prioritize mandate for peacekeeping operations. It is important to adhere to political means for peacekeeping resolution, for peaceful resolution of disputes as one of the most essential principles of the UN Charter. PKOs must always be carried out, bearing in mind the fundamental goal of political settlement. The scope of mandate and key tasks of the PKOs must be adjusted based on developments on the ground. The mandate, whether it's comprehensive, limited, or targeted, should take into consideration the need to advance the peace process and expectations of the government and people of the countries concerned, rather than wills of the external forces. Legal reform, protection of civilians, and promotion of human rights are all tools that serve the political process. They should not replace the political process itself. PKOs should strive to lay the foundation for the long-lasting peace and stability of the countries involved so that they can achieve self-reliance and continued development as soon as possible. A clear and feasible exit strategy is also an integral part of the entire plan for peacekeeping. The Security Council has already laid out exit arrangement and timetable for UNAMID, according to which exit should be done in an orderly manner as planned in order to create conditions for Sudan's peacekeeping and transition. Second, we need to improve the performance of peacekeeping operations. It is our common goal and joint responsibility of the Secretariat, the mission, financial contributors, PCC, and PCCs. We believe that the performance evaluation system must be developed based on the specific situations on the ground, and the evaluation must be done accordingly and appropriately of the performance of each mission, PKO, and peacekeeper. It is necessary to take into consideration situations in different mission areas and actual circumstances of each DCC and PCC. It is also important to note that performance evaluation without considering the level of resources available to troops is unrealistic. It is also unfair to the peacekeepers who have made tremendous contributions. Providing sufficient resources for the PKOs and ensure the efficient use are critical to success in peacekeeping. Cutting resources for PKOs purely for financial reasons will hinder the performance of PKOs, weaken their effectiveness, and even pose new risks. That is why China stressed at the recent Security Council meeting to extend the mandate of UNIFIL that the resources should not be cut without careful considerations. Third, we have to ensure the safety of personnel in peacekeeping operations. PKOs rely on people for their execution. The current PKOs are facing an increasingly complex and dangerous environment, especially in regions such as Mali and Central Africa, where peacekeepers are confronted with acute security challenges. While PKOs are by no means zero risk, we have a responsibility to minimize the safety risk and avoid any casualties and sacrifices that could have been prevented. To this end, Member States and Secretariat should actively implement the Security Council Resolution 2518 to help missions strengthen their capabilities for early warning and provide better equipment and medical conditions for peacekeepers by establishing an express way for medevac of peacekeepers. China suggests the Secretariat appoint a full-time consultant to coordinate and implement safety issues for peacekeepers, which will help achieve tangible progress in a relatively short period of time. As one of the leading countries for the subject of personnel safety in the A4P initiative, China has helped other TCC and PCCs with training and has worked with other countries to explore feasible ways to improve the safety of peacekeepers. Fourth, it is imperative to strengthen partnership in PKOs. A strong partnership can effectively channel resources in different fields, strengthen cooperation between the UN and regional organizations, and expand the influence of PKOs. The Security Council, the UN Secretariat, financial contributors, TCC and PCC should strengthen their communication and carry out in-depth discussions through existing mechanisms such as TCC and PCC meetings and Security Council peacekeeping working groups in order to form synergy for peacekeeping reforms. The UN should work more with the African Union, ASEAN, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and other regional organizations. The UN can support these organizations, which in turn can do the same to the UN. Instead of seeking a dominant role in this process, each organization should use its strength as well as to work together to maximize the effectiveness of PKOs. The AU's independent peace missions, as a good example of the African solution for African questions, provide important support to the UN PKOs. The UN, therefore, should provide them with sustained and predictable funding. The UN Secretary General in September 2016 briefed the Security Council on recommendation to strengthen the cooperation between the UN and African Union. This recommendation should be fully implemented. President Xi Jinping of China announced at the 2015 UN Peacekeeping Summit that China will continue to support Africa in its efforts to build an African standing army and the rapid crisis response forces. All these commitments have been honored. China will continue to, in the best of its capability, contribute to the peace and security in Africa. Mr. President, the United Nations will celebrate its 75th anniversary in a week's time, and the 75th GA general debate of the GA will begin. The theme of this important event highlights our collective commitment to multilateralism. The UN peacekeeping operation is an important underpinning for upholding multilateralism and maintaining international peace and security. China will continue to work together with other peace-loving countries to improve Pkos, stand for multilateralism, and safeguard the international system with the UN at the core and the international order based on the international laws. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Indonesia.
Gianni, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much, Abari. Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I'll repeat, I would like to thank you for convening this annual open debate on peacekeeping operation. I also would like to thank USG Lacroix, Jean-Pierre for his comprehensive briefing on the progress of peacekeeping reform, particularly on the implementation of the Action for Peacekeeping or A4P initiative. As usual, Jean-Pierre have given us a very insight on what's happening. Now, as we speak, COVID-19 continues to pose challenges to the work of peacekeeping operation and hinder our efforts to effectively implement the A4P. Despite the challenges, however, we should keep up the momentum and continue our collective work to improve and strengthen peacekeeping operation. In this context, Indonesia wishes to highlight the following points. First, strengthening partnership for training and capacity building. Indonesia has and will continue to advocate for stronger partnership to improve training and capacity building. This is also in line with the presidential statement on training and capacity building, which was adopted during our first presidency of the Council in May of last year. Our Peacekeeping Training Center in Bogor has been very active in not only training our own personnel, but also providing training and capacity building for international participants. We were recently preparing for hosting training on engineering under Triangular Partnership Project, which unfortunately now has to be postponed to next year due to COVID-19. Even during the pandemic, the center continues to train and prepare our personnel. Earlier this month, we deployed 210 peacekeepers to join our Formed Police Units or FPU and engineering company in MINUSCA and UNAMID on a rotational basis. All personnel undertook the mandatory pre-deployment training to prepare them to serve in the missions. As I have mentioned on previous occasion, Indonesia has always championed community engagement by peacekeeping mission. During the COVID-19 pandemic, community engagement has become even more important for peacekeeping to be in the hearts and minds of local population and to better protect and serve its needs. That is why we always include community engagement as an essential part of pre-deployment training to its peacekeeper. The second point is ensuring the safety, security, and health of peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are deployed in increasingly dangerous security environments. which often put their lives at risk. This trend was also mentioned by USG Lacroix, whereby threats to civilians have not decreased in the past 6 months. We pay tribute to all personnel who gave the ultimate sacrifice in this noble endeavor. We strongly condemn attacks against peacekeepers and urge host countries to swiftly investigate and bring perpetrators to justice. We also urge the Secretariat and Member States to continue improving the safety and security of peacekeepers, including through the effective implementation of Resolution 2518 of 2020. Moreover, as COVID-19 continues to spread in countries hosting peacekeeping missions, the Secretariat needs to redouble its efforts to improve medical capacity and take necessary measures to ensure the safety, health, and security of peacekeepers. The third point is on increasing women's participation in peacekeeping operations. As emphasized by Jean-Pierre, women peacekeepers have increased the effectiveness and overall performance of peacekeeping missions. Together with their male counterparts, women personnel can play diverse roles and tasks in the mission, including in community engagement and protection for women and children. The consensus adoption of Resolution 2538 of 2020, the first ever resolution on women peacekeeping during Indonesia's presidency in the Council of last month, served as the basis and momentum to reinforce our collective commitment to promote the full, effective, and meaningful participation of women in peacekeeping. The unity of the Council and overwhelming support from Member States to this resolution reflect the high priority that the international community has accorded to the indispensable role of women in peacekeeping operations. We must now translate this resolution into concrete actions. On its part, Indonesia takes pride in deploying more than 570 women peacekeepers since 1999. Currently, there are 158 Indonesian women peacekeepers in 7 peacekeeping missions. And we will continue to increase the participation of our women peacekeepers, including by providing training and capacity building for them. Finally, I would like to underline the importance of providing clear and realistic mandates for peacekeeping missions that are backed up by strong political support and adequate resources. Mandate also should include the role of women peacekeepers. Adequate resources are not only crucial for peacekeeping missions to carry out their mandates effectively, but they are also vital for the PCC to maintain their operational capabilities and performance, as well as to ensure sustained contribution in the long term. TCC-PCC should also be able to plan ahead, and thus the need for reliability of resources as well as mandates. We therefore urge all member states to fulfill their financial contribution in full and on time, and accordingly urge the Secretariat to pay reimbursement to the TPCCs without delay. To conclude, let us be reminded that peacekeeping is a collective undertaking that requires all stakeholders to perform their responsibilities. In these challenging times, we must reinforce our partnership and provide full support to our blue helmet. I would like to underline once again, in terms of concrete action that are being seen by people on the ground, is the blue helmet. And thus, we need to continue to support them with all the availabilities, with all the resources that we have. Blue helmet really represent the United Nations as such in the ground. We, Indonesia, as a long-standing supporter of peacekeeping and a top TPCC, remains firmly committed to contribute and strengthen peacekeeping operation. May the blue helmet have a safe and concrete action on the ground. Thank you.
Has the representative of Indonesia finished his statement? Because I can't hear him and I can't hear interpretation. In that case, I thank the representative of Indonesia for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation. Mr. President, we would like to begin by thanking USG Jean-Pierre Lacroix for his briefing on progress in reforming UN peacekeeping operations and the problems that have arisen in connection with the coronavirus epidemic. We see peacekeeping operations as a key instrument in the UN's arsenal in maintaining international peace and security. UN peacekeeping missions take place under dangerous conditions that are exacerbated by difficult humanitarian and socioeconomic conditions. Sometimes there are also asymmetric threats. These are the realities that also come together with the changing character and dynamic of conflict that require a corresponding fine-tuning of peacekeeping operations. Unfortunately, I will not be able to continue interpretation because the sound quality is very poor. I do apologize.
Секретариата ООН по обеспечению безопасности миротворцев, а также смягчению последствий пандемии в миссиях, в том числе за счет укрепления их потенциала по борьбе с эпидемией, совершенствования системы медицинского обслуживания, а также принятия мер по снижению риска распространения вируса среди персонала и при взаимодействии с гражданским населением. Помощь принимающим государствам в их усилиях по противодействию коронавирусу может оказываться по просьбе национальных властей в рамках соответствующих мандатов миссий. В качестве положительных примеров отмечаем операции в Центральноафриканской Республике и в Демократической Республике Конго, которые помогли странам пребывания в разработке планов по реагированию на пандемию. Любые изменения, связанные с ротацией контингентов, необходимо осуществлять в тесном сотрудничестве со странами-поставщиками контингентов. Господин председатель, несмотря на текущие беспрецедентные обстоятельства, важно, чтобы дальнейшая эволюция миротворческих операций ООН осуществлялась в правильном направлении. При этом императивом должно оставаться уважение суверенитета принимающих государств, соблюдение целей и принципов Устава ООН, а также базовых принципов миротворчества. Убеждены, что голубые каски должны сохранять свой беспристрастный статус при любых обстоятельствах. Силовые или наступательные мандаты могут предоставляться Советом Безопасности.
Mandates can be provided by the Security Council in each specific case depending on the situation on the ground. The aim of peacekeeping is the peaceful settlement of conflict through political means. Therefore, we support the Secretary-General's call for a global ceasefire, which would guarantee the conditions that we need, continue mediation efforts to encourage parties to a conflict to engage in a process of national reconciliation. There are temporary difficulties caused by the pandemic, but it's important to maintain those successes that have already been achieved in achieving peacekeeping or peace agreements. An important precondition for the effectiveness of a peacekeeping operation is constructive cooperation with the host country. Under a pandemic, it's particularly important that we strengthen trust and exchange information. Dialogue is particularly important to guarantee timely access to important goods, to medical equipment and to medicines for UN peacekeeping mission personnel, and also to resolve other pressing issues, including those connected with limitations that have been introduced as necessary to fight the spread of coronavirus. We also think it's very important to take into account the opinions of host countries and also troop contributing countries when considering issues around extending mandates, and also consultation with them when preparing recommendations for the evaluation reports on the effectiveness of peacekeeping missions. In particular, in the UNIFIL mandate, recently substantive additions were made connected with the very sensitive issues of the use of modern technologies, including unmanned aerial vehicles and observation measures which might touch on the sovereignty of the host country. Similar activities also burden the UN budget yet further. There's a contradiction here between the positions of some countries which on the one hand are adding to mandates, but on the other are calling for the reduction of financing and also for the number of peacekeepers. The solution, the slogan rather, do more with less, can be applied in economic theory, but it's hardly going to be useful in improving the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations. Optimizing peacekeeping mandates to make them more effective should be accompanied by cuts in secondary and non-core activities for peacekeepers, in particular those connected with human rights or with social or gender issues. Mandates should not be populist, but rather clear and realistic. President, we think it is necessary that we continue to improve trilateral cooperation between the Security Council, troop contributing countries and the Secretariat to improve the spirit of partnership, cooperation and mutual trust. This approach is at the heart of the Secretary-General's Action for Peacekeeping initiative, which includes a call for close cooperation between all participants in peacekeeping, with the aim of improving the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations. During the most recent substantive session of the Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations, the C34, this year, it was agreed that the further promotion of the A4P could be carried out in line with the opinions and recommendations of member states, including those that were put forward at the high-level event in September 2018. To this end, the structure of the C34 report was brought in line with the main thematic elements of the A4P. We think that the recommendations and decisions contained in the Special Committee's report will serve as a foundation for the Secretariat in its further peacekeeping activities. In conclusion, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the peacekeeping operations and also those providing personnel and troop contributing countries for their unswerving commitment to fulfilling their obligations in the current conditions. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Estonia. You have the floor, Estonia. Thank you, sir.
I would like to thank Undersecretary General Lacroix for his very comprehensive briefing and for highlighting the current challenges facing United Nations peacekeeping. Today's meeting is a rare opportunity to reflect on a peacekeeping as a whole. To narrow it down, I will be focusing on peacekeeping reform, performance accountability, and women, peace and security. Mr. President, Estonia welcomes the Secretary General's guidance in reforming the United Nations organization. For improving peacekeeping, his Action for Peacekeeping initiative has proven to be an important framework for our collective efforts. It has successfully guided the adoption of several peacekeeping-related resolutions in the Security Council, such as 2538 on the role of women in peacekeeping and 2518 on the safety of peacekeepers. It has led to the establishment of several key mechanisms by the Secretariat, such as the Planning and Performance Assessment System, and it was further operationalized by the successful adoption of this year's report on the Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations in its new format. Estonia is proud to have been among the first to endorse the A4P declaration, and we will continue encouraging all parties to implement its commitments. Turning to performance, one cannot overlook the impact of COVID-19 on peacekeeping. The responsibilities of UN peacekeeping missions have multiplied, have had risks they are facing. The ongoing pandemic is testing the performance of peacekeeping missions, their ability to deliver on their mandates, to promote conflict resolution, and to protect civilian populations, in particular women and children. To that end, Estonia will continue to emphasize the crucial importance of implementing policies and mechanisms aimed at verifying and enhancing the performance of these operations, with particular focus on the protection of civilians and the promotion of human rights. We expect the strengthening of comprehensive performance assessment system and pre-deployment visits to continue. The peacekeeping performance and accountability framework should be finalized very soon. In Mali, for example, we have stressed the need for increasingly mobile, flexible, and robust troop posture and stronger early warning systems. These, however, rely on ensuring that the troops we deploy have adequate training and equipment, but also the capabilities necessary to fulfill their mandate. Strong mission performance is vital to the success of peacekeeping. Speaking of improving performance, Estonia aims to achieve gender parity in our troop contributions by the end of this year. Evidence shows that better gender balance leads to better peacekeeping and more effective engagement with local communities. With this, we will continue to underline the importance of implementing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda and its priorities, in particular promoting the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in peace process. We will also continue to stress the importance of increasing the effectiveness of peacekeeping by better engagement with communities, in particular with the help of community liaisons and human rights officers. Mr. President, I would like to conclude by expressing gratitude and strong support to all UN women and men whose dedication and sacrifice bring hope to millions of people and help countries navigate the difficult path from conflict to peace.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the representative of Estonia for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States. You have the floor.
Mr. President, and thank you, Undersecretary General Lacroix, for your important briefing today and for the various updates on so many initiatives that you are undertaking along with the Secretary General. The United States is deeply committed to UN peacekeeping as a critical tool for promoting international peace and stability. To ensure this tool effectively serves its purpose, that we seek strong leadership, performance, and accountability across missions. Improving peacekeeping performance is an integral part of the Secretary General's Action for Peacekeeping agenda, a priority for the UN Security Council as outlined in Resolution 2436, and a focus area of the UN General Assembly's Special Committee on Peacekeeping, or known as the C34. The United States was pleased to host a high-level event on performance in December 2019 during our council presidency, where the Secretary General reaffirmed his commitment to peacekeeping performance and to, quote, build a framework in cooperation with troop and police contributing countries to better systemize performance evaluation and accountability, end quote. The Trump administration is committed to elevating and maintaining momentum on peacekeeping performance and accountability, which we will emphasize in our preparatory event for UN Peacekeeping Ministerial, and which will certainly feature prominently in the ministerial agenda. The United States remains the largest financial contributor to UN peacekeeping, as well as the largest capacity building contributor. Since 2005, the United States has invested nearly $1.5 billion through our military and police peacekeeping capacity building initiatives alone. In addition, the annual budget for our U.S. Global Peace Operations Initiative increased over the past 3 years to over $70 million. These investments have yielded positive outcomes for peacekeeping performance and for the populations whom the blue helmets protect and work alongside. We deliver this support through partnerships with politically willing, operationally capable troop and police contributors who want to improve their national peacekeeping training and capacity. We also directly invest in the UN Secretariat's capacity to develop and implement performance evaluation frameworks and standards for uniformed forces. We also recognize missions must have the necessary resources and capabilities to fully carry out their mandated tasks in complex, fragile environments. Robust training and equipment are necessary, but not sufficient alone to improve performance. They must be backed by a commitment to the mission and sustained by a culture of performance and accountability. Consistent with Resolution 2436, troop and police contributing countries should meet UN performance standards for personnel while maintaining the highest standards of conduct. Peacekeepers must adhere to the Secretary General's zero tolerance policy on sexual exploitation and abuse. And those who do not meet such standards should be held accountable, including by the relevant troop and police contributing countries. Improved performance across the board provides safety and security to peacekeepers everywhere and is in everyone's interest. I want to also highlight the role of women in peacekeeping and its particular importance. Women improve peacekeeping performance and effectiveness, and we have long supported increasing the number and meaningful participation of women in UN peacekeeping, and we're pleased to co-sponsor Resolution 2538, the first standalone resolution on women in peacekeeping. We continue to encourage governments to adopt and promote policies to address the persistent barriers to women's participation in peacekeeping and to increase women's participation both in UN peacekeeping as well as in their country's own militaries and police. Good performance starts early in the force generation process, from the moment of the pledge through the training and pre-deployment verification process to the deployment and operational readiness, to in-mission assessments of ongoing performance. It is a full-time pursuit that requires leadership and dedication. The UN's Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System is helping to regularize, register, and validate the readiness of peacekeeping units. More than 200 capabilities are now registered in the PCRS. We should consistently leverage the PCRS system so that the most qualified and capable units are deployed. Additionally, the Comprehensive Performance and Assessment System, CPAS, is helping the Secretariat gather, analyze, and integrate data on mission performance to drive more efficient and effective planning and decision-making. We fully endorse these data-driven approaches to reforming peacekeeping and improving performance and accountability, and we expect to see them more widely and consistently used. The recent launch of the Integrated Performance Policy Framework represents the fulfillment of several performance and accountability requests made to the Secretariat over the last few years, and we appreciate the many months of work and consultation that have gone into creating this process. We welcome the framework's emphasis on whole of mission performance, civilian and leadership accountability, the importance of capacity building, and strengthening remedial and accountability actions for formed units. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Trump administration remains committed to advancing peacekeeping reform, performance, and accountability. We remain equally committed to helping the UN develop and promulgate sound policy, doctrine, training materials, and performance and accountability standards to help TCCs and PCCs perform well. We support the continued development and refinement of the Integrated Performance Policy Framework, and we look forward to its full utilization across missions. Blue helmets represent the best of all of us. Working together, we can ensure that the trust, competence, and professionalism we recognize in so many peacekeepers remain the expectation into the future. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the United States for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Kingdom of Belgium. You have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, dear colleagues, first and foremost, I'd like to thank Undersecretary General Jean-Pierre Lacroix for his very clear and complete briefing. And I'd like to start by paying tribute to the women and men who serve under the UN flag, especially those who have paid with the sacrifice of their lives for this commitment to peace. COVID has taken a further terrible toll in human lives, and none of us shall ever forget the sacrifices made by the personnel of our missions. I'd like to focus my remarks on three main aspects. First, where are we with our reforms and what is left to do? Second, I'd like to look at the role of protection of missions. And finally, I will stress the need for supporting the rule of law in this area. Turning to reforms, Mr. President, I'd like to recall here that Belgium is an ardent defender of Action for Peace, A4P. We will continue to strive to fully undertake our commitments, and we commend the work done in the area of performance, especially development of two main tools based on culture of effectiveness based on data, to wit, comprehensive planning, performance, and assessment systems, the CPAS, and the integrated performance and accountability framework, the IPPAF. We can go even further together with the common use of the lessons learned from these tools. In fact, it would be useful for this council in renewing mandates if it would have detailed analysis available to it on recommendations which come from these tools and the orientation to be given to the missions. It's important to remain engaged and committed to A4P in all areas of mutual commitment. The recent resolution 2538 on women in peacekeeping operations thus promotes increased participation of women, be they in uniform or civilian, by advocating an approach which goes beyond stereotypes, which proposes solutions to classic impediments to their participation. We need to continue on this path, and we need to also continue to promote multilingualism in the missions, and we are doing so by translating training manuals into French for the personnel. Turning now to protection, another pillar of action for peacekeeping and the mandates of this council. Peacekeeping has developed an attitude of rapprochement to local populations in recent years, and we applaud this evolution. And this leads to differences in the mandates and on the ground, differences such as in Bunia, Mopti, and Malakal. This greater engagement also allows for better identification of the risks for both the populations locally and the soldiers who are peacekeeping. The missions need to have the tools available to them, and this engagement with their personnel, they need to have clear instructions, including for the protection of persons with whom they come into contact. Guidelines on information acquisition, which was recently distributed, are one of these tools. Indeed, protection of women, of children in armed conflict should also remain at the heart of peacekeeping operations, and Belgium advocates for teams and missions which would be responsible for bolstering their protection. The COVID crisis has had a negative impact on the possibilities for engaging, and the imperative social distancing makes contact more complex but not impossible. And while we're reinventing new ways of working alongside this pandemic, missions need to also reinvent themselves and find the tools necessary to continue to engagement, continue with it in the full respect of the health of missions personnel and local populations. And coming to my third point now with regard to supporting the rule of law in the mandate and the functioning of operations. post-conflict rebuilding needs to especially be based on democratic police, which is respectful of human rights, which is based on a reliable justice system, and humane penitentiary institutions. The soundness of these institutions will help us lay the foundation for sustaining peace. And
of my intervention. In this framework, this Council mandated some UN missions to provide support for transitional In this framework, this Council mandated some United Nations missions to provide support for transitional justice measures. A serene and peaceful future must be based on justice, recognitions of victims, and commemoration of past violations. We recognize the work carried out by the missions for almost 30 years in this regard, and the support provided by the missions to national justice systems. We also recognize the variety of models for both transitional justice and mission support. With our partner and friend, South Africa, we continue to work towards the adoption of a resolution on this important subject, and I would like to thank all members of this Council for their support. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President, says Belgium. The President says, I thank the representative of the Kingdom of Belgium for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of France. You have the floor, ma'am.
Le Président, je tiens à remercier à mon tour le secrétaire général adjoint, Monsieur Jean-Pierre Lacroix, pour son exposé très éclairant. Je souhaiterais pour renforcer la performance des opérations de maintien de la paix. Cela suppose des personnels suffisamment formés et équipés, un financement adéquat et des outils d'évaluation.
Adequate financing, and much of this has happened with appropriate financing and evaluation tools. Progress has been accomplished in pre-deployment visits, which make it possible to ensure operational levels for the troops and trainers who can be expedited to the field if necessary. Finalizing the IPPAF is also important in this regard. France will remain particularly mobilized in supporting the training of troop contributing countries, especially from French-speaking countries, with particular attention to the area of training in international humanitarian law. In order to perform well, peacekeeping operations also need to tailor their methods to evolution on the ground, and that would include the development of rapid deployment battalions, such as was done with the DRC, in order to react as quickly as possible to an increase in tensions. It also includes improving equipment, filling any training deficits, improving CASEVAC procedures, or changing the distribution of undertakings such as took place in the CAR or Mali in the context of adapting to MINUSMA for the framework. Sharing of intelligence and innovative technologies needs to also be developed. Finally, performance is also based on the posture and the mindset of the troops as well as their leadership. The COVID pandemic has shown that peacekeeping operations can be flexible and agile enough in order to adapt to changing circumstances and undertake new action, be it support for host states or awareness raising or sharing expertise in a given area. And these efforts should be given credit. The troops should be given credit for what they did, and they should be continued with these efforts. Performance, however, is just one prong in the various prongs available for peacekeeping that France supports since its briefing, and this initiative should be implemented in all areas, and this is my second emphasis. Indeed, the effects of the initiative are real. The operations further integrate the priority given to political solutions. The mandates are clearer and there's a better hierarchical organization, but the needs for training and equipment of blue helmets have also been better defined. But we need to go a step further. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the agenda Women, Peace and Security, it's necessary to bolster participation of women in order to have a greater impact on the ground. And in that regard, we commend adoption of Resolution 2538 on women and peacekeeping operations, which should help us to make some concrete progress in this area. The Security Council also needs to be able to plan an effective and efficient transition from peacekeeping operations and the structures that replace them, such as peace building. The mandate on human rights that we entrust to peacekeeping operations should be an integral part of that strategy. The logic or reasoning behind partnerships undertaken with regional organizations, especially the African Union, should also be at the very heart of our considerations. The security of blue helmets operating in environments which are increasingly volatile should be further improved. And here I'd like to once again pay tribute to those who have fallen for peace, more recently within MINUSMA, MINUSCA, or MONUSCO. And as was underscored by the representative of Indonesia in particular, crimes against blue helmets should not go unpunished. Mr. President, to conclude, today more than 150 states have signed the Declaration on Common Commitments for Peacekeeping, and that would include France, who will remain committed with determination and will remain steadfast in order to support these operations, which are the very DNA of the United Nations. Thank you. The President says,
J'ai suivi en anglais. Je voudrais à présent donner la parole au représentant du Royaume-Uni. UK, the floor is yours. UK, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. And our thanks also to Under-Secretary General Lacroix for his briefing today. Mr. President, today we take stock of a year in peacekeeping unlike any other. And I want to salute the dedication and courage of our peacekeepers, as others have, who have persisted with mandate delivery in the face of the challenges of COVID-19. I also pay tribute to the peacekeepers who sadly have lost their lives this year. Mr. President, the challenges of recent months underline why we must continue to pursue the Secretary General's Action for Peacekeeping agenda. Reforms to improve planning and decision-making have helped missions respond with resilience to the challenges of COVID-19, including by using the Comprehensive Performance Assessment System. The CPAS is just one vital component of the Integrated Performance Policy Framework mandated by Resolution 2436. Improving peacekeeping performance must remain a priority. When missions and personnel perform to the high standards we all expect, they are better able to deliver their mandates and ensure their own safety and security. We are encouraged by the progress made in developing a rigorous performance and accountability framework and look forward to seeing this implemented. Mr. President, as well as action at the mission level, it is important that all of us, as member states, live up to our respective peacekeeping reform commitments. The United Kingdom has continued efforts to streamline mandates on which we hold the pen, aiming to ensure that they are clear, focused, realistic, and achievable. This year, we worked with our German co-pen holders to secure council agreement to respond to the government of Sudan's request to help with their political transition, while ensuring continued UN support for stability and security, particularly in Darfur. As one of the largest and most consistent extra budgetary contributors to the Department of Peace Operations, we continue to support projects which are helping to drive key reforms, totaling almost $4 million this year alone. And as a troop contributing country, we are responding to the capability needs identified by the UN, including through our upcoming deployment of a 250-strong long-range reconnaissance task force to MINUSMA. And finally, Mr. President, in this 20th anniversary year of Resolution 1325, we remain especially committed to advancing the participation of women in UN peacekeeping. To this end, we are continuing to support the Senior Women's Talent Pipeline, as well as the ELSI Initiative Fund. Mr. President, as we prepare to mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, it is fitting that we reflect on how the collective enterprise of UN peacekeeping has evolved. And it is imperative that we keep our reform momentum in order to give our peacekeepers every chance of success. Thank you, Mr. President.
Et pas grand-chose de spécifique à ce qui a été dit. J'ai noté presque 2 ans et demi d'existence. Notre initiative mérite à la fois qu'on fasse le point de ce qui a été acquis et
there are still some challenges in a context which is obviously more difficult now and complicated by COVID-19. There's a number of jobs that have been done on a priorities basis, which we think are important to take into account following our efforts. I would like to once again reiterate the importance of concerted action and close exchanges with the members of the Security Council, member states, troop contributing and police contributing countries, financially contributing countries. You can count on the Department of Peacekeeping Operations in order to stay in close contact and have a close dialogue with the Security Council and with all of its members. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lacroix, for that additional information, says the President. There are no more speakers on the list. The session is hereby adjourned.